The major problem, well, one of the major problems, for there are several, one of the many major problems with governing people is that of whom you get to do it, or rather of who manages to get people to let them do it to them. To summarise, it is a well-known fact that those people who must want to rule are, ipso facto, those least suited to do it. To summarise the summary, anyone who is capable of getting themselves made president should on no account be allowed to do the job. And that quote comes from Douglas Adams. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Now, over the past several years, it has become more than apparent to most people that the world is vastly different to what they previously may have perceived it to be. Many people have become all too aware of the ghastly spectre of corporatism that has already taken control of the Western world and that now threatens to engulf not only the rest of the world, not only mankind, but indeed all life on the earth. And I call it the ghastly spectre of corporatism because really, folks, that's what it is. It's like a cancer. It's like a psychic parasite that infects people's minds and causes them to superimpose a commercial value over life, over every aspect of life. I mean, just think about it for a minute. I mean, look at our societies. I mean, look at what our kids do these days. Look at our social pursuits, the way our social values have slowly shifted towards aesthetics rather than substance. Things have changed very much over these last few decades, folks. Our priorities have changed. We may each individually still hold true to some of the more traditional family values on a personal level, but as a society, generally speaking, our priorities have very much shifted from what they once were. We value things differently to what we once did. As individuals, we may still hold true to traditional values, as I said, but as a society, we do not. As a society, in fact, we do exactly the opposite. As a society, rather than upholding traditional humanitarian values, we very much follow economic values. And that fact alone forms the basic foundation of a huge and almost insurmountable human dilemma. And it truly is a dilemma, folks. Just think about it. We live in a society, the purpose of which is ultimately to serve the needs of mankind, apparently, and yet this social system places more value on economics than it does on life. And many people are now beginning to realize the danger of this situation. Many people are now beginning to realize, well, I hope they are, they certainly should be, that virtually every aspect of life on this planet now has its worthiness appraised according to its economic value. And as the veil of secrecy is lifting and the sheer brutality and indifference to life that this commercial economic system promotes becomes more apparent to people, and people are beginning to realize just how ridiculous and how truly dangerous this system actually is, just how little regard it holds for human life, or indeed any life at all. And it's taken until now for people to realize this, and many people are only just beginning to realize this now, because the shift to this corporate economic way of thinking has been a very subtle process. It's been achieved over a period of decades and generations even, mainly via government control of our education system, which itself has been used to reshape human thought and to indoctrinate rather than to educate our children into a particular way of thinking. And this is all becoming very apparent to people in the world today because As I said, folks, the world has changed a great deal. Even since I was a child, it's a very, very different place to what it was 40 or 50 years ago, and it's changing even more rapidly as the years, months, and even weeks and days go flying by. Now, there can be no doubt that the world is currently in an extremely precarious state. The situation in Syria, for example, and there should be no mistake at all that the situation in Syria has been contrived by the West, and it's not about chemical weapons, and it's not about freeing any oppressed people, folks. It's about banking, and it's about resources. There are many who also believe it to be a situation that could very well escalate into global conflict. But personally, I don't think it will lead to global conflict. I think that global conflict is already well underway. It's already happening. Western forces are already invading countries and waging war against the East. It's just that the East isn't really fighting back because they know that if they do, then the West will cry victim and escalate their aggression. And because the people of the West are unaware that the West is actually the aggressor and the most destabilizing influence in the world today, and they generally swallow whatever the corporate-controlled Western media tells them, then the East know that global public opinion may go very bad for them should they attempt to defend themselves against these Western attacks, whether the West is the aggressor or not. And the other very unfortunate situation in all of this, of course, is the fact that the people of the West, many of them, truly believe that it's a good thing for the West to control the rest of the world. And, of course, they generally feel this way due to the culture of fear and paranoia that they've been forced to grow up in, whereby they've been taught that the world is out to get them and that the government is their only friend, and that only the government is able to protect them against the big bad world. And generally they believe it, despite the fact that virtually every single problem we face as a society has in fact been created by government to begin with. It's like a classic protection racket scam, folks, because the reality is that we only need government to protect us from all the problems that the government creates for us. But getting back on topic, and I will return to Syria a little bit later in the show, but getting back on topic, looking at the world, folks, we truly do have some very serious issues to contend with, and I believe we really do need to pay attention and start addressing some of these issues. And I know I've gone through this list before, folks, but we really do have some things happening on this earth right now that truly are global issues, issues that affect all life on this planet, and yet all we see from governments regarding these issues is rhetoric and buck passing, and to be honest, folks, because these are global issues, I feel that by we the people choosing to simply wash our hands of these affairs and simply expecting government to fix things up for us, we ourselves are also somewhat guilty of buck passing. Because the issues we face may well have been created by government, but they affect us all, and so really we should all be paying attention to them regardless of who is responsible for the problems occurring. In fact, in the face of such important issues, simply pointing the finger and saying, you made the mess and so you can clean it up, is not only childish but also extremely foolhardy, not to mention grossly irresponsible. It really is perilous for any of us to feel this way, folks, because the issues we face are global issues that affect everybody. And what are these issues, folks? Well, number one, of course, we have the situation unfolding in Fukushima. And I say unfolding when really it unfolded over 2 years ago and has simply been deteriorating ever since. And some of you may view this issue as being old news and therefore no longer relevant, but I can assure you that nothing could be further from the truth, my friends. Fukushima does affect every single man, woman and child on this planet, And because our governments are simply not paying attention to it, in fact, not only are they not paying attention to it, but they're ramping up their warmongering in other places around the world, such as Syria, then I think it really does come down to the people to start addressing this issue. Because make no mistake about it, folks, Fukushima is a potential extinction level event. It is releasing over 300 tons of radioactive water into the ocean every day. And it's been doing so for 2.5 years now, and nobody is doing anything about it. And that, folks, is a very important issue. I don't know whether you like eating fish, but trust me on this, folks, your days of eating fish from the Pacific Ocean are now over until the end of time. And it's just going to get worse if we don't address this issue. And Fukushima is just one issue, folks. That's just one. And Fukushima can be addressed at the same time as we address some of the other issues. They can all be addressed together. But we first need to realize the importance of addressing these issues, and we need to figure out what the best methodology is. Now, of course, something else which is affecting the environment just as much as Fukushima, and something that has been very much in the news of late, is the enormous amount of environmental damage that is coming from coal seam gas mining and the incredibly toxic process of hydraulic fracturing or fracking that it often employs. And folks, something you clearly need to understand here is that water is the most valuable resource on this earth. It is as essential to life as the sun. Without it, this planet would be little more than a barren and lifeless rock. And something else that you need to clearly understand, I want you to really let this sink in, is that many years ago, almost 100 years ago, in fact, people such as Nikola Tesla offered the world free energy. And since that time, there have also been many free energy devices that have come to light, most especially in recent years. And the government is very much aware of these technologies as well. And because of these facts, there should be no doubt in anybody's mind that we do not need to be harvesting coal seam gas in order to meet our energy needs, and yet here we are doing so again because it makes good business sense to do so. Well, at least in the short term it does. It doesn't in the long term, because in the long term it means polluting every drop of groundwater on the planet and probably killing all the life that exists on the earth. And that, of course, is the real point, because there is only 100% guaranteed thing that can result from hydraulic fracturing, and that is the destruction of groundwater. And yet, as I said, water is the most valuable resource on the planet. And the fact that our governments are carrying out this practice is an incredibly important issue, folks, and obviously the government isn't going to stop what it's doing, so it is up to the people to address this issue as well. And again, folks, this practice is destroying our groundwater, and water is life. And we cannot allow politicians to destroy that which gives life to this planet simply because they wrote some rules down on a piece of paper that they believe gives them the permission to do so. And we cannot let any type of paper-based reality, any rules that have been written down by public trustees, stand in the way of us protecting one of the main sources of life on this planet, namely water. And so that is another issue. And it just goes on, folks. We're also seeing a huge amount of environmental damage being created by companies such as Monsanto. And folks, make no mistake about it, the actions of Monsanto are utterly reprehensible. And I'll tell you, it boggles my mind when I hear people defending the virtues of Monsanto and claiming the company is saving lives and providing food for the starving masses with its new GM crops, when the fact is that it is doing exactly the opposite. Monsanto has in fact caused the death of thousands upon thousands of people. Over 20,000 farmers committed suicide in Pakistan alone due to failed Monsanto crops, and it has caused health defects in thousands of others who have consumed its GM food. And bear in mind that every test done on animals using GM food showed organ damage and sterility after 3 generations. And GM crops also appear to be largely contributing to the loss of the global bee population. So make no mistake, folks, there is an enormous amount of environmental damage. In fact, an environmental catastrophe, some have even termed an environmental apocalypse, that is happening in the world due to the actions of Monsanto alone. And so that is another issue, and they are 3 very major issues, folks. Fukushima, the destruction of the water table through coal seam gas mining, and the destruction of nature via the reprehensible actions of Monsanto. And there are other issues as well, folks, things such as geoengineering, things such as the electromagnetic soup that we are swimming around in, we are forced to spend all of our days in, the incredible damage that's being done to our environment via mobile phone and wireless technology. But the 3 things that I previously mentioned, Fukushima, coal seam gas mining, and the damage that Monsanto is doing to our natural environment, these 3 things, each of them alone, is a possible extinction-level event. And it might seem like I'm exaggerating with that, but really I'm not, folks. If the groundwater is destroyed, it could do an enormous amount of damage to life on this planet. And Fukushima, well, Fukushima has the potential to irradiate the entire planet, folks. It will just keep going until we find a way of containing it. And nobody has yet come up with any type of viable option in that regard. You've got to understand this is right on the edge of the ocean, so it's pouring contaminants into the ocean, and there's very little we can do to stop it melting down or to encase it in a sarcophagus the way we have with Chernobyl or anything like that. It's not in the type of position you can do that with, so it's something that we absolutely need to pay attention to. And as for the actions of Monsanto, well, the actions of this company really do speak for itself, folks. The mere concept of Terminator seeds and splicing animal genes in with vegetable crops, it literally defies any and all logical analysis by any sane and rational mind. Now, folks, these 3 events are extremely hazardous events. These are things that are working to destroy all life on this planet, and they're raging out of control because of the actions of our governments. And we the people feel that there's nothing we can do about it because we believe that were we to do so, we would be acting against the law. But as I've often said, folks, there's really only one law, and that is do no harm. And all of these things are doing a great deal of harm to the planet and to all life on the planet. So the question is, where do we draw our line in the sand, folks? When do we say, look, I'm stepping out of the path of the oncoming train now, regardless of what your legal parameters say, because I've realized that your legal parameters are what is causing the damage, and that your legal parameters are in fact breaking the one law of life on this planet, which is again the law of do no harm. And again, folks, these very important issues are simply being ignored by our governments, and while these issues are going on, our governments are in fact attempting to escalate the situation through things such as the war posturing we're seeing in regard to Syria. President Barack Obama has very much shown his true colours in regard to the Syrian situation, because the Syrian situation, folks, in regard to the chemical attacks that we've recently seen, it was very obviously either a mistake, whereby the rebels had some chemicals that were supplied to them by the West explode, which is a very, very credible possibility because it was reported by a very respected Middle Eastern reporter who claims that he has information which proves that that's what happened. But it was either that or it was simply just carried out by the West, folks. There's no way the Assad regime did this. This is either a result of an accident or it is an absolute false flag attack. And all the other countries are saying, no, we want to see the evidence first from the UN weapons inspectors. But the United States is saying, no, we're just going to go in there. We'll go it alone if nobody's prepared to back us up. And this shows what a warmongering terrorist government Barack Obama's government actually is. And it shows what a warmongering state the United States has become. And it pains me to have to say that, but it's unfortunately true. I mean, the situation in Syria is just out of control, folks, and bear in mind that in January there was a leaked memo which indicated the United States was prepared to stage a false flag chemical attack in Syria. And here, a few months later, right on cue, we have a chemical attack. Now, as I mentioned, a Middle Eastern reporter by the name of Dale Gavlak, who is a very respected reporter for the Associated Press, has released information which indicates that the rebels have admitted that the chemicals were theirs. There's even a report that's come out from naturalnews.com which claims that the chemicals that were used in the event was actually sodium fluoride. I don't know how true that is, but that's certainly interesting. But suffice to say that the rebels have admitted that it was their mistake, that the blast was caused by them mishandling a canister that was given to them by the Saudis. So there can be no doubt that Assad did not carry out this so-called chemical attack, folks, and there can be no doubt that the United States is simply lying to the populace again. John Kerry is a barefaced liar. Joe Biden is a barefaced liar, and Barack Obama is a barefaced liar. All of these people should be impeached. They should be removed from office and held accountable for their actions immediately, folks. John Kerry has even gone on record saying that the use of chemical weapons is a moral obscenity. He, of course, neglected to mention the United States' use of chemical weapons in the form of Agent Orange in Vietnam. He neglected to talk about the United States' use of white phosphorus in Iraq, not to mention the terrorist state of Israel using white phosphorus as recently as 2009 on the people of Palestine. He just seems to have let that one slip his mind as well. And he also neglected to talk about the use of depleted uranium, which is a weapon of mass destruction, which is causing a massive amount of death in the Middle East and will continue to do so for the next 4.6 billion years, due to the reprehensible actions of the terrorist and criminal United States government and the barefaced liars and globalist scum who are currently in control of that government. And these scumbags, these terrorist, lying, genocidal, maniac scumbags remain in control of the United States government due to the overall apathy of the people of the United States. And that is the unfortunate situation, folks, because when the world has had enough of the terrorist, warmongering, destructive actions of the United States government, it's going to turn its attention to the United States. And unfortunately, the people are the ones who are going to cop the brunt of that retribution. And the people who are actually responsible, the terrorist, scumbag, criminal leaders who are actually in control of the country at the moment, they will simply scurry off to their underground bases and hide away while the rest of the country is obliterated by the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is sick of the terrorist actions of the United States government. And I think the people of the United States seriously do need to pay attention to what's going on and stand up and rein their terrorist, warmongering, lying, scumbag government in. The people of the United States must be mortified by the actions of their president, Barack Obama, who was supposed to bring about change. He certainly did bring about change, though, didn't he? He turned the United States into a police state. And, of course, they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize when he first got office because they intended to send him out to wage as much war as possible. Barack Obama has quite literally shaped up as the worst terrorist in the world today and the biggest lying piece of scum that the United States has ever had at the helm of their country. He's actually outbushed George Bush, and I think the world would be vastly improved had Barack Obama been drowned at birth and that gene had been eliminated from the human gene pool, as it is obviously a very defective gene. And the mere concept that this terrorist scum, this low-life, lying piece of dog excrement can just sit there and nonchalantly condemn a nation to death at the flick of a pen really makes my blood boil. They're going out there waging war against the world. The United States hasn't been invaded since it was founded. So there is no reason for the United States to have gone to any war in the last 200 years. And don't give me Pearl Harbor, folks, because that was a staged event. Declassified documents clearly proved the United States had ample warning that the Japanese were coming at Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese wouldn't even have come to Pearl Harbor to begin with had the United States not pushed them into a confrontation. So every war the United States has fought in the last 200 years has been based on a lie and has been little more than terrorism staged at the whim of international banking cartels. That's all the United States has done. And this latest incursion into Syria, folks, I am really annoyed about this. In fact, I'm so angry. Folks, I'd really like to meet Barack Obama in a dark alley, I'll tell you. And for Barack Obama to be doing this, I mean, he needs to be impeached, he needs to be tried, and he needs to be removed from the human gene pool, because the man is the biggest liar and the worst terrorist that the United States has ever produced. Although I don't think the United States actually produced him, because I think he's actually Kenyan and shouldn't even be president to begin with, but that's another story. I mean, there's ample proof that his birth certificate was faked, and the man shouldn't even be in office. And the point is, folks, what are the people of the United States going to do about this? What are you people going to do about this situation? Are you going to let your government go and destroy yet another nation in the form of Syria? Because everybody out there who doesn't speak out about it, for every Syrian child who dies, you are responsible. But I think it's break time here, folks, so I'll have to leave my ranting here for now, and we'll go and have a break. Thank you for spending this time with me on the air today. It's always a pleasure to have your company, and I'll speak to you again in a few minutes. Thanks for listening. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, folks, with all of the things that I mentioned to you in the first half of the show, it's very easy to see that we have some very, very severe problems that we need to deal with immediately, if not sooner. And folks, with what's happening in Syria, it's becoming apparent, hopefully to the entire world now, that the United States of America is in fact a rogue state. It is the biggest source of global instability in the world today, and it's important that something be done about this. But when saying that, it's also very important to recognize what the true power behind the military might of the United States is, because the truth of the matter is that the United States government is puppeteered by European banking cartels. It always has been. The whole European monarch system still controls every country that Britain ever touched its hand to, regardless of what facades have been put up to claim differently. And when pointing the finger at the United States, it's very important to recognize this. And it's a very interesting dichotomy that's been set up, because the American people are the ones who cop the brunt of the actions of the United States government, and yet the United States government has really nothing to do with the American people. It's controlled by European interests. And like I said, every country that Britain ever touched its hand to is still controlled via that monarchical system. And ultimately that monarchical system is controlled by the banking cartels that took over England quite some time ago. The Rothschilds have basically controlled England ever since the Napoleonic War, ladies and gentlemen, and it's been that way ever since, and that's who the real controlling hand is behind America as well, because it's all about banking. The banking system is what controls these countries. Every country is always controlled via the monetary system. This is why the first thing you saw in Libya when they overthrew Gaddafi was they put in a European-controlled central bank. They did that and claimed that that was a mark of freedom. It puts us in touch with the rest of the world, and it gives us the same money system that everybody else has got, and so now we are finally free because it is money that frees us. That's the logic that they presented to the people, when really nothing could be further from the truth, because it is the Rothschild-controlled monetary system, the fractional reserve monetary system, the World Bank monetary system that we've got, which is the glue that holds the corporate slavery system together. And that's why they have gone around putting these central banks everywhere. And really, what you look at what's gone on in the world since 2000, folks, just go to a website called The Project for the New American Century and read the document that's been there for 13 years now, available to the public, called Rebuilding America's Defenses, where they talk about the fact that they would like to conduct various theatre wars and take control of countries such as Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and Syria, and that this is the plan for establishing the United States as the dominant power in the world, and a power that will never ever be questioned because nobody else will ever have the military might to stand up to the United States, and that this is the plan for the United States, and that in order to do it, they may need a Pearl Harbor type event in order to usher it in. And this was before 9/11. Just go and read the document, folks. They tell you exactly what they were going to do, and this is exactly what they're doing now. And we've reached a turning point where it's become basically public knowledge right around the globe. The world now knows that this is what's going on. The world now knows that America is being used to basically dominate the entire world and lock the entire globe down into a corporate-controlled slavery system run by European banking cartels. And there won't be any way out of this slavery system because of the genetic alteration of the environment that's occurred during all of this time as well, through the geoengineering, the spraying that goes on in the skies, through the Monsanto crops, the way they've polluted all of the seed stocks on the earth, the way they've polluted the soil with geoengineering. Soon it will be impossible to live outside of the system and grow your own food because you'll be completely dependent upon Monsanto seed. So you're going to have to be locked into a system of commerce in order to survive. There's not going to be any way around it. And this is how they're doing it, folks. This is how they're putting it all together. And this is becoming public knowledge now. So the question is, what are we going to do about it, folks? Because the only way they're able to get away with this, the only way they're able to do what they do, is because we believe the rules that these people write on pieces of paper are actually real, that they are actually law, and that we are constrained in our actions by these rules that public trustees write down. And what I've been attempting to point out to you is that we're not. They're just rules, folks. They're just words on pieces of paper, and that if we choose to unite as a community and start taking responsibility for ourselves, start taking a little bit of responsibility for the state of this planet, and realize that it's up to us to turn things around, then we can change the direction that we're going very, very quickly and very simply. But it takes respect, folks. We have to have that respect for each other. Yeah, and it's easy to get pulled into fights. It's easy to get pulled into arguments with people. God knows I do it myself. And it's easy to do this, folks. But think about it. Think about why you're arguing with people. Most of the arguments I get drawn into are usually because the people that I'm arguing with are divisionists who are attempting to create division, especially within the alternate research movement, folks. There's a lot of people that attempt to create division in the alternative research community. And think about it, folks. If you go to someone's website and they are an alternate researcher and they are claiming that they are enlightened and leading you towards the truth, well, always be aware that it's their truth they're leading you towards, and always look at their website. See if there's information there which is attacking other researchers. Because if there is, then the person who runs the website is a divisionist who's seeking to discredit all other research and lead people down an alleyway towards their own truth. When really what the alternate research community should be doing is teaching people to find the truth of themselves, teaching people to find their inner truth, their own story, how to live the art of their own lives. Teach people or help people find a way to have their own inner light shine, not a way to make your light shine for you, because that's unfortunately what a lot of people do. They are only interested in their own truth instead of helping people find their own truths. And it's a time in history when we're finding this, folks. We are finding our truths, and our truths really are, the truth of all mankind is, I believe, that we are caring, nurturing, loving creatures that naturally want to live in harmony with each other. We want to laugh and play and eat and love. We want to improve reality by our presence in it. We want to experience the art of our own lives, see what we can create through our imagination, because our imagination is so powerful, it can create anything. It's created this entire mess that we are currently in. This is all a product of human imagination, folks. Every problem that we have, someone had to think it up in order for it to exist as a problem. But now that we know the problems are there, we have the opportunity to fix them. Because that's what all of these problems are. That's what everything that I brought to you in the start of the show was. The three issues that I mentioned to you, which could, each one of them, serve as an extinction level event. Fukushima, coal seam gas mining, and genetically modified plants and genetically modified food. These three issues, if left unchecked, could alone terminate life on this planet. All of the Terminator seeds, folks, if they get out into the environment and they start terminating all the edible crops, then what do we do? What do we do when the economic system crashes and we can't buy any food? We just all starve because this company owns the patents to the food. And what happens when the stocks are simply lost and the seeds simply disappear? Coal seam gas mining. What happens when the groundwater is suddenly polluted? When none of the plant life on the planet can survive the water that is in the ground? Even though we have precipitation, what will it take for the groundwater to pollute the forests and the forests to disappear, and that will effectively stop most precipitation? Because most precipitation is the result of evaporation, which is usually the result of atmospheric activity created by a plant life that exists on the ground. So it's all a symbiotic relationship that works together, folks. What happens when the groundwater becomes polluted? What happens to the plant life? So what happens to the rain? And Fukushima, folks. Fukushima is the elephant in the living room. Fukushima has the potential to kill all animal life on the planet, both land animals and aquatic life as well. The only thing that would really survive in an irradiated Earth would be plant life and possibly insect and maybe some reptile life. The rest of it would probably disappear or mutate to the point that it became unrecognizable. And these three events are three of the biggest problems we've ever faced, folks. I mean, and there's geoengineering. I mean, there's other stuff that they're doing. The electromagnetic soup that we're swimming in, this is also a huge problem. But it's difficult to wake people up to the realities of things such as geoengineering, and it's difficult to wake people up to the dangers of electromagnetic pollution. But Fukushima, coal seam gas mining, and GM food, this is right in your face, folks. And these three problems present humankind with some of the greatest opportunities for unity that we've ever had. If we can simply realize that these three things all threaten life on this planet, all life on the planet. It doesn't discriminate. Radiation does not discriminate who it kills. Groundwater pollution does not discriminate who it kills, and Terminator seeds and GM crops do not discriminate with who they cause illness and damage to or what they destroy. So these three things are three of the greatest opportunities for human unity that we've ever had. The choice now is whether we will choose to embrace these opportunities, whether we will choose to see above the fiction that we believe prevents us from doing so, is another good way of looking at it, because it is fiction, folks. All of it is fiction. There's no reason why we have to allow our world to be destroyed around us simply because a public trustee wrote rules on a piece of paper. There's no reason why we have to go and bomb a country because we have barefaced liars in office who say it's a good thing to do. And I would really, really like to see the United States military boycott this war. I would really like to see people break ranks. I would like to see those soldiers who are really worth their salt, those soldiers who joined the military because they believed they were doing the right thing. I would like to see these people actually do the right thing and refuse to go in there and bomb another country. And I'd like to see them hold their government accountable. I'd like to see people break ranks. I'd like to see politicians and police and soldiers, everybody break ranks. I would like to see the world stop paying their taxes. I would like to see the people of the world stand up and say enough is enough. And folks, again, if you are voting in the Australian election this month, please do one of two things. Either go to the polling booth and get the voting form and cross off the name of every single candidate through the name and the box that you're supposed to tick, cross it all out, and write down at the bottom of the form, there are no suitable candidates. That is how you should vote. And if you don't want to vote like that, then I encourage you not to vote at all. In fact, that would be the best thing to do. I'd love to see the entire population of this country simply boycott the Australian elections pending suitable candidates who don't work for a criminal banking institution and who will do the right thing by their employers. We need good trustees, folks. We don't need this criminal cabal to continue doing what it's doing. And besides, folks, if you do vote in the Australian election, you're simply supporting organised crime anyway, because we do not have a de jure government in this country. We have a corporate-controlled government, in fact a corporation masquerading as government, and if you do choose to vote in the Australian election and you give your vote to any one of these people, you are effectively supporting organised crime. And I put it to the Australian government, Kevin Rudd, you're a criminal. Tony Abbott, you're a criminal. You are all criminals. You're all scumbags. You're warmongers. And we, the people, are sick of your antics, sick of your actions. And the state of the world has got to the point where you are forcing us to take the matter in hand and publicly call you out as the liars that you are and demand that you either step down or that the system holds you accountable for your actions. Personally, I don't really need accountability, but I think a lot of people do. But I just want you to all go away. I want you to stop messing with the world. I want you to stop messing with my life and everybody else's life. Stop conducting wars. Stop polluting groundwater. Stop putting fluoride and poison and toxins in our environment. Stop brainwashing our children. Stop stealing from us. Stop enslaving us to a corrupt monetary system and simply go away. That would be a good way to start next year. I think if every politician on the planet was simply scooped up and put on Christmas Island, and we can think about what to do with them later. The point is, folks, that we're at a turning point in history right now. This war posturing towards Syria in the face of the blatant lies and very likely false flag attack that led to it really has indicated that it's time for the gloves to come off, folks. We simply cannot allow this to continue the way it's going. And the American people, it's time for you people to make a difference. It's time for you people to refuse to comply with this corrupt system anymore. It's time for police officers to actually do their job. Those police officers in the United States, it's time for you to actually support your country and support your people and do something about the criminal scum that's running your country and that is conducting its acts of genocide against other countries on this planet. It's time for the police and the military and the people of the United States to realize that the eyes of the world are currently on them and that it is time for them to hold their corrupt, criminal, scumbag, warmongering, lying, terrorist government accountable for the damage that it's causing to the global community. The United States of America is not exporting freedom, folks. The United States of America is exporting terrorism. And all of those people who are pointing the finger at everybody and saying, oh, it's the United States, it's the Vatican, it's the Zionists, it's this, it's that. It's all the one mechanism, folks. It's all the one mechanism. It's run by banking cartels. The whole spectre of Zionism and the Jesuits, who is it? Who can I point the finger at? Folks, it's all the one thing. Don't worry about it. It's the one thing. It's just different arms of the same octopus. And those people who choose to hate the Jews and blame the Jews for everything that's going on, I've got to realize that the Jews are as big as scapegoats as anybody else. They are as big a victims as anybody else. It is not the Jews. It is the corporate system that is controlled via the money system on this planet, the banking system, the banking cartels. That's the food, folks, regardless of what the underlying force is. Whether you want to point the finger at the Rothschild family or the Zionists or the Vatican or the Jesuits or whatever, it's irrelevant, folks. It doesn't matter. What matters is what the solution is. What matters is that the people of this earth discover themselves again, discover the art of their own lives, and choose to stand in the power that we have. And that's only going to come when we discover ourselves in our own lives. It's only going to come when we choose to respect each other. And that's what I've been attempting to do with this radio show right since the very beginning, folks. It's about respect. And don't buy into the division. Don't buy into websites that attack other people all the time and point the finger at everybody else and get you angry and raving and shaking your fist at some enemy on the internet that you can't get to and can't see And, you shake your fist at these people and you feel like you've actually done something. You've released that inattention, and that's what they do it for. That's why they get you screaming and ranting and raving and shaking the fist at other researchers and pointing the finger at everybody you can, because it distracts you and it prevents you from addressing the actual problem, which is the system itself and the disempowerment of the people. So don't fall for the trap, folks. I mean, that's what they want you to do. They want you to be there screaming and shaking your fist and expelling all this energy at people you really can't get to. And let's face it, the people online are people that you can't get to. If you're having arguments with people online and you're pointing your finger at people online, people you've never met and people you don't actually know, then it's a complete waste of time. And most of the people who point their finger at other researchers, they just point them and say, oh, he's an agent or he's a shill or he's disinformation. Do they really know? Do they really know? Because many researchers are only half awake. Many researchers have only had access to certain types of information, certain aspects of reality that they've been able to process. Many people are at different stages of wakefulness. And so you can't just point the finger at someone who makes a statement and claim he is a paid government shill. He could just be someone who is half awake. You don't know. That's the point. The point is that you don't know. And unless you have 100% proof that someone is an agent or a shill or that they are spreading disinformation, unless you have absolute proof, you shouldn't point the finger at them. I mean, there's some things that are obvious. There's some things that are obviously government setups, like the Dallas Goldbug Wellaware 1 site. This is obviously a government COINTEL operation. So you can look at it and you can say, well, this is COINTEL. It's good that it's there because it's there for you to see. Now you can see what disinformation looks like. Whether the guy running it, Ed Sheerini, is programmed, whether he's a government-paid shill, or whether he's simply under mind control, who knows? But the site is definitely a COINTEL disinformation site. And you can tell that because of the amount of other researchers it attacks. That's all it does, is attack anybody and everybody that it possibly can. So you can tell what these sites are. You can tell who are legitimate researchers and who are just there to muddy the waters and create discontent and disinformation, and to get you riled up and to get you expelling your energy on things that don't matter. Because you'll get there and you'll scream and rant and rave and you'll go into chat applets and you'll post things and have huge long conversations attacking other people. You make videos and post them online and think that you've made a difference, and all the stuff that you're doing to attack someone that you've never met, that you don't know, and that all your information that you have on them is based on conjecture, hearsay, and someone else's opinion. So you've got to be careful, folks. You don't want to be expelling your energy in attacking people. You need to be putting your energy into building community, putting your energy into improving this reality, putting your energy into learning how to respect yourself so that you can respect those around you. Because once we do that, all the barriers break down. Once we learn to respect each other and we treat each other as equals in our community and always strive to do the right thing in all that we do, always strive to serve creation. Once we do this, the whole system breaks down. That's all we actually have to do to combat the police state, to combat the terrorist actions of the globalists who are in control of our governments at the moment. That's all we have to do, folks, is respect each other. And even those who won't come to the party and won't respect each other and won't respect the people and will continue to march to the beat of the military drum, eventually, if all of our society starts to respect each other and the people within our community start to respect each other and live that way in their lives, these people will come around by default. They'll be forced into it. They will simply see that they are doing the wrong thing. They'll begin to see that there's a better way, and they will break ranks. And I think everybody should break ranks. Folks, if you're out there and you're a soldier and you're a police officer, if you're a government employee, anybody, if the government tells you to do something and your actions may cause harm to somebody else down the line, then you have a moral obligation to disobey that command and to break ranks and to make as much noise about the corrupt bureaucrat above you who is giving you these distasteful orders as possible. You need to alert the people of the actions of these criminal scum folks, and you need to stop doing what they say. You need to stop complying with this system. And again, every Australian, if you're voting this month, I urge you to stay home on the election or to cross out all the candidates' names and write that there are no suitable candidates on the voting form. These sorts of things make a difference, folks, and we can make a difference this year, and we have to make a difference this year, folks. We've got to really put our nose to the grindstone. We've got to take this confrontation in Syria and look at all the events that are happening around the world, such as Fukushima, coal seam gas mining, Monsanto, all the things that I covered earlier. We've got to look at this stuff, and we've got to realize that there is now a need, an urgent need, for the people of this world to act. There is now an urgent need for the people of this world to wake up to themselves and wake up to the power that they have, wake up to what this reality is all about, and to wake up to these terrorist scum who are creating this police state around us and who are about to go and kill tens of thousands of people in Syria. They're about to go and bomb these children again, folks. In order to keep them safe, they're going to go and drop bombs on them. This is what America does, you know. Oh, look, there's been an attack in that country. We don't like you attacking your people, so we're going to bomb you. We're going to bomb your people because we don't like you hurting them. So we're going to hurt them for you. I mean, I don't even know how people buy into this flawed logic, folks, but they do. And it's the same story every time. The United States must go and bomb this country in order to keep the people safe. It's the same excuse every time, and it's theatre, folks. And I'm sick of being fed the same lie. I'm amazed to see the people swallowing the same lie over and over and over again, because that's what happens. But hopefully it's not going to happen anymore, and we're seeing people break ranks, folks. What we just saw in the British Parliament was wonderful, to see the British Parliament reject Cameron's plea to go out and conduct terrorism against Syria, because that's what it is, folks. War is terrorism. And the British Prime Minister, Mr. Cameron, is a blatant globalist terrorist. That's all he is. These people get me mad, folks. They really do get my blood boiling, and I thank you for putting up with my ranting about these people today, because I suppose it has been somewhat of a rant. But honestly, folks, I'm sick to death of these scum, and the gloves simply have to come off. But look, I think we're at the end of the show here, folks, so I'm going to have to leave it there for now. I have had to postpone my trip to Palestine because the Egyptian government is currently carrying out bombing raids on the Sinai, and it's not safe to cross the Sinai, so I'm going to have to postpone the Palestine trip to sometime next year, or perhaps when the hostilities settle down in Egypt. I am going to Peru later this year if I can raise the funds, because I wish to create a documentary there with Ben Stewart that I will use to launch the Full Circle project. I think we really have to put some empowerment back into the community, folks, and that's what I intend to do with the Full Circle project, which will hopefully get off the ground early next year. If anybody is able to offer me any support for this, it would be greatly appreciated. It is very much needed. And I, again, thank anybody who has ever made a contribution to the website. It's very, very sorely needed at the moment, folks. So if you can, please do help out. I'd really like to get this trip happening. I'd really like to make it happen. I really would like to make this documentary. I think time is of the essence, folks, and we have to really put our nose to the grindstone and work to make a difference in this world, folks, and that's what I intend to do 24/7 from this moment forward. But that is it for me, folks. Thank you very much for joining me on the air today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for the support and the kind words that you've shown me over these many years that I've been speaking to you. But that is it for me, folks. I'll have to leave it there for now. I'll look forward to speaking to you again next week. Please take good care until then. In Lakesh, my friends, in Lakesh.